everybody. So I wanted to come on here and do kind of a fun Q&A because I just finished my application cycle, so why not hear a few of my answers to what happened to me during my application cycle. So with that being said, let's get into it. This isn't in any particular order, but I hope I answer a variety of questions that you might be interested in hearing about. So my first thing is, when did you submit your application? I submitted my application November 3rd, 2019, and it's important to remember that the DO cycle is longer than the MD cycle, and if you don't know what that means, there's two different routes to going to medical school, or I guess the most mainstream. So the osteopathic cycle is open longer than the MD cycle. I applied in November because I took my MCAT in that previous September, so I got my results a month later in October, and I wasn't quite ready to submit because I didn't have my letters of recommendations in order, and I had some final touches that I wanted to put onto my personal statement. So with that being said, I applied in November. My next question is, what was the hardest moment for you during your application cycle? I really think it was just submitting. I had a lot of things kind of complete and not fully completed. It was really, really difficult for me to track down some of my past professors because some of them, specifically my physics teacher, I was never able to get in touch with until I sent an email to the department head to then CC him in an email saying that I was trying to get in touch with him. So if anything, and if this is happening to you, reach out to other people that might have more of a weight or recognition if they were to CC the teacher or the MD or the DO or someone who is going to basically submit your letter of recommendation on your behalf. You would want to reach out to them because at the end of the day, you need to have certain quantities of certain letters of recommendation, whether it's science teachers or what have you. I also didn't have like a committee letter and things like that. So I really was banking on having specific teachers as well as past principal investigators write my letters of recommendation. How many times did I write my application? How many times did I just review my application? That's a great question. I don't even know because I can more or less say a lot, and we'll just keep it at that because at the end of the day, you want your application to look more or less perfect, and it takes time. You're not going to get that in your first go around. You need people to read your personal statements as well as your short answers. You want to make sure you have strong letters of recommendation, and again, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So, did I have any worries when applying? I would say yes, because I had a low MCAT score, which I will be making a video, which I'll link above, talking you guys through my MCAT score. And I also had difficulties getting my letters of recommendation, and I guess in my head those weighted a little bit more so than like me having a committee letter, because I didn't even have the option to have a committee letter. I wrote a blog post, which I'll link below, about how I was not afforded the same opportunities as my peers at my university, and again, that's beside the point. I made it work without it. And I also didn't take biochemistry, so from the standpoint of not being able to meet certain requirements, because when applying or choosing the medical schools you want to apply to, I was kind of at a disadvantage because I didn't take biochemistry. I took both part 1 and part 2 of organic chemistry, and yeah, it is what it is. Like, I knew I couldn't apply to PCOM, for example, because I didn't have biochemistry. So yeah, I knew I had just off the bat limited amounts of choices of medical schools, osteopathic medical schools that I could apply to. How many letters of recommendation did I have, and who wrote them for me? So I had 4 letters of recommendation. I didn't even apply with a DO. letter of recommendation to osteopathic medical school, but I don't think it hurt my application. But if anything, you might want to be exposed to that field of medicine, because if you are going to school to study it, you want to make sure you've been exposed. I had a different way of being exposed, which again, I'll link the video above. I went to a shadowing day for a school in Arkansas to see kind of what osteopathic medical students do all day. And I got to see a lecture, I got to talk one-on-one with some of the students, I got to witness OMM and be in their lab and, you know, see their simulation lab and things like that. So that was a really cool experience, and through that, I knew that I could see myself as a student doctor as those students were. So going back to my letters of recommendation, as I said, I had a physics, organic chemistry teacher, a MD, and one of my social science research professors write a letter on my behalf. So that was really great. When did I receive my first secondary? So as I just told you, I applied November 3rd, 2019. I received my first secondary on the 6th of November. So that was only 3 days after. And I believe that school didn't screen. However, one of the schools that does screen sent me a secondary the following day on the 7th. So within 3 to 4 days, I was already writing my secondaries. And just a tip is, if you are applying to medical school, go on Student Doctor Network and look to see some of the secondary prompts and start writing it as you applied there for your primary application, and if you want to apply for your secondary application through that school, go on and start writing the prompts, because if anything, you'll be able to just copy and paste your answers, and it kind of gives you some time to think about the best way that you would like to respond to those prompts. So, how many interviews was I selected to go on to? I went to 2 interviews. I went to 2 interviews in the month of February. So, I received my secondary application the 6th of November. I got a notification that I was granted an interview the 2nd of December, and I went in for my interview on the 28th of February. So if you can think about it, that was my timeline for one of the schools. So that was just one of my interviews. The second interview kind of happened similarly. I got my notification sometime in January that I was granted an interview. And again, as I said before, I did do both of my interviews in the month of February. So how many secondaries did I actually receive? I received 7 secondaries. So I only applied to 7 schools and I received every single secondary. Was I nervous? So as I said before, kind of some of my shortcomings to applying was a low MCAT score and not having a pre-committee letter and not having taken biochemistry, but all in all, I really was not nervous in applying to medical school because I knew that a lot of parts of my application could just stand alone. There's a lot of things that I've done that I'm sure most applicants have not done. Like, I'm sure most applicants are not certified HIV counselors and testers for their state. Like, that's something I did, and I was able to talk about, you know, the vulnerable aspect of doing that, the interpersonal communication skills that are needed for that, my interest in health education just from that whole experience, because we did talk to clients. Well, I did talk to clients about their risk assessment and talking about how some of their behaviors might affect their health. So that really gave me a very interesting perspective into the healthcare field. I mean, I was using scientific technology to draw people's blood and test it, and I would always take the client along with me so they can process, you know, what they're going through. People came in with a lot of anxieties, but again, I won't get off on that tangent, because if you would like to, I have a video reading my personal statement where I talk a little bit about that experience, and I hope you are a little bit interested, so much that you would want to go and watch that video. So I highly recommend you go watch that video, because I think it might shed a little bit more light of who I am as a person and why medicine for me. So Any interview tips? I actually have a lot of interview tips. First, be yourself. You want to make sure that you know yourself, you know why you want to get into medicine, and also it's important for you to just understand kind of how the interview will go, so you're not like flustered or kind of taken off guard if it's an open or even a closed interview. So that means the person who is interviewing you has read your application through, or maybe they haven't read your application through. I had one of my interviews as an open book and then the other one as a closed interview, because that's, I guess, what the school chose. But it was important that I knew that, because when I do go mentor some students, and what I learned in that situation is that sometimes in those closed interviews, depending on if you are granted an interview, the person who is interviewing only sees your personal statement. Like my person specifically, they knew my name, but other than that, they've only read my personal statement. They didn't have access to my MCAT scores or anything. So I just walked in like basically an open book, ready to share with them my story. But a lot of my story was within my personal statement. So if anything, it's also, I guess, a little secret tip to make sure that your personal statements can stand by itself. I always say that you want to be able to look back on your personal statement the day you graduate medical school and completely understand and have solidified why medicine. Like, why did you even get yourself into this? Like, what is your passion? What is your drive to continue on and, continue your pursuit in medicine? Lastly, you want to make sure that you dress to impress. You are going in and this is your time to shine. Make sure you're comfortable, but also very professional in your attire. I remember waking up that day having chipped nails, and if any of you know, and literally right now you can see, my nails are done. I like a pale pink nail polish. That's like my signature. And I sat outside, and I'm going to show you a video of me painting my nails before I went in for my interview. There was someone literally looking in my car because it was a cold day. People weren't going into the interviewing area yet. People were sitting in their car in the visitor section. So I was sitting next to this lady in the car, and I'm like painting my nails. I have the window cracked open so you don't smell, I wasn't consuming all the fumes, and it was literally hilarious. It's something, of course, that I would do. And I was like, all I could think in my head is, I really hope when I walk in, they're not trying to shake my hands because, my nail polish isn't dry. So don't do that. But if anything, make sure you do dress to impress. I personally didn't bring a briefcase. I just knew that if I was there, if I was dressed accordingly, I really couldn't mess it up, because if anything, for my job, as I just said, as an HIV counselor, I have to talk to people. I'm pretty good at it, and so I think that you guys definitely don't need to go over the top. Just to make sure you're comfortable as well as professional, and that's really all you can ask. My next question is, how many schools did you apply to? I only applied to 7, and as I said before, I did receive 7 secondary applications, but I only ended up submitting 6 to all of the schools that I did first apply to. I guess another burning question would be, why did I choose DO? So I only applied to DO schools, as I said before, and I did so because I really liked what I saw that day I shadowed osteopathic medical students. And I wanted to be fair and not have bias, but I also went to a shadowing day of medical students, like an MD at an allopathic school. And I don't know, I just got a more welcoming vibe from the osteopathic medical school. And again, this distinction and this choice is a personal choice. So I highly recommend you guys get as much exposure as you can. Within my town, there is this really, really influential and well-known DO that's a dermatologist. And so with just knowing her, I saw how, although there's more or less a primary care focus with the osteopathic curriculum, I knew that if I did want to go for one of those harder specialties, it is possible with being a DO. So that was kind of my mindset about only applying to DO. And my dad, who's deceased, he was an MD, double board certified, and my mom's an occupational therapist. And when I saw the students practicing OMM on each other, when I did shadow the students, I saw literally my parents' two professions kind of morphed into one. And I always was curious about what my mom did, and learning therapies and learning manipulations and just being exposed to all that. And so I wanted there to be at least some type of aspect of that within my curriculum, so I just chose DO for myself. So when did I receive my first acceptance? I received my interview notice for the school the 14th of January, and I went in for my interview the 9th of February, and I received my acceptance to the school on the 9th of February. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video and you got to see a little bit timeline wise, as well as, you know, how my whole application cycle kind of went about. And I hope that if you have any questions, that you feel free to write below some comments. I'll be sure to comment back. And hey, if you guys have any other questions that you want me to come back on and talk about, I'll be I'd literally be more than happy to come on and make a video about this. I really think it's important for like just pre-med students in general to have some type of awareness of what other people before them have gone through, and I hope I've achieved that with answering some of these questions for you today. So with that being said, feel free to like and subscribe. Also follow me on Instagram. I post a bunch of stuff there, and I hope to see you in another video.